Hello there, good evening and welcome. This is Abuja Dispatch. And like we always say on this program every week, this is a platform created to bring to your living rooms those events, issues, and indeed those characters that have shaped the entire landscape of the federal capital city, Abuja, for the past 7 days. Adegboyega Arogbodo is my name. Let's start off with those stories that made our headlines in the outgoing week.
The federal government has launched a new national security roadmap. The maiden edition of the National Security Strategy was published in 2014. Ever since then, evolving trends in the security environment have given rise to new and more complex challenges, thus necessitating a review of this national security strategy based on the timeline of 5 years, which is stipulated for the review of this strategy. At the launch in Abuja, President Buhari said the framework is a practical expression of his administration's commitment to end insurgency and lay a foundation for sustainable peace and development. The core philosophy of this strategy is human security, as it is a shift from the state-centric orientation to a new paradigm in which the safety and well-being of the individual citizens are the primary basis for all national security measures.
President Muhammadu Buhari has called on the state chairmen of the All Progressives Congress to see their positions as that of service to the party and the Nigerian people. The president gave this charge while hosting the party chairmen in the State House. The president urged them to extend the APC manifesto to all the world, local and state government levels with a view to enlarging the scope of the party in their domains. Meanwhile, the APC National Chairman Adams Oshiomhole says Edo State is not at risk of losing the next governorship election in the state, as the people have faith in the achievement of the APC-led administration since year 2008. While addressing State House correspondents after a brief meeting of the APC State Chairman with President Buhari, Oshiomhole reiterated his belief in the capacity of the internal mechanism within the party to address all issues of intra-party conflicts, saying it is a feature of party democracy. The APC national leader further reassured that the party is bent on extending its stronghold in the South-South geopolitical zone, and the foundation work has been concluded in Edo State, irrespective of who heads the party at the national level.
Page 501.
The Nigerian Senate has passed the 2020 budget of 10.59 trillion naira as against the 10.33 trillion naira presented by President Muhammadu Buhari to the joint session of the National Assembly on October 8, 2019. This followed the adoption of the report of Senate Committee on Appropriation. Presenting the report, Senator Barau Jibrin said the increase of 260 billion naira allows for interventions in critical areas such as national security, road infrastructure, mines and steel development, health, among others.
The collaboration of the two arms in the utilization.
Senator Jibrin said the statutory transfer stood at 560.5 billion naira, recurrent expenditure 4.8 billion naira, capital expenditure 2.5 billion naira, debt servicing 2.7 billion naira, fiscal deficit 2.3 trillion naira, and deficit to gross domestic product of 1.52%. He also pointed out that daily oil production stood at 2.18 million barrels per day, oil benchmark stood at $57 per barrel, against $55 proposed by the executive, while the exchange rate stood at 305 naira per dollar. President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, noted that with passage of 3 main bills of public procurement, Finance Bill and Appropriation Bill for 2020, the executive arm is in good position to ensure robust implementation of the 2020 budget to its fullest and to the benefit of all Nigerians.
Language is identity, and parents have the responsibility of teaching the younger generations their indigenous languages for the sake of posterity. This was the crux of the issues raised at the opening session of the 31st Conference of the Linguistics Association of Nigeria in Abuja. National President of the association, Professor Harrison Adeniyi, posited that it behoves parents and guardians to teach the mother tongues, as the appreciation of the inherent values can aid national integration and societal cohesion. Professor Adeniyi charged government at all levels to tap into the potency of the research works carried out in the ivory towers when proffering solutions question of national unity. The United Nations has declared 2019 as the International Year of Indigenous Language. The goal is to raise awareness of the world's indigenous languages, not only to benefit the speakers, but also in recognition of the important contributions these languages make to the world's cultural diversity.
Thanks for staying with us. It is that time of the year when there is a massive transportation of goods and human traffic on Nigerian roads. Many are already concerned about the poor state of major roads leading to their communities and localities. In the special report forming our next segment, Dateline, we look at the state of Nigerian roads and government's efforts towards making the travel time shorter this festive season. Stay with us.
Almost 2 weeks to Christmas, some Nigerians have obviously concluded plans to travel home for one reason or the other. While some will be traveling for marriage ceremonies and others for social events, others will be going to their villages to celebrate the nativity with their friends and relatives. Of much concern to these Nigerians are the means of affordable and safe transportation to their various destinations. For those who could afford and those who could not afford their own cars, the deplorable state of some of the Nigerian roads is a nightmare. At different fora, Minister in charge of Works and Housing has continued to reiterate government's unending efforts at keeping the nation moving by awarding new contracts despite paucity of funds and even with many ongoing road projects in the country.
Mr. President, in the budget speech, had emphasized clearly that strategy was to focus on completing projects that we inherited and projects that we started. But like with all general principles, they admit of exceptions, compelling cases. So some of the roads that you heard today, one of them links a port. And then the roads that were approved are also part of the budget, is a law. So we're duty bound to execute laws. And those are all of the considerations.
Meanwhile, investigations carried out in the Ministry of Works and Housing reveal that close to 40 billion naira has been earmarked for the geopolitical bases. A breakdown of 123 roads built for rehabilitation or already undergoing repairs by the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, FERMA, and contractors in all the 6 geopolitical zones. 11 of such roads are in the northwest, 15 in the northeast, 16 in the north central, 14 in southeast, 16 in south-south, and 51 in southwest. It was gathered that the failed portions of roads with subsistent contractors will be fixed by such contractors, while FERMA handles those which currently have no ongoing contracts. However, in a move to fast-track the roads rehabilitation and ease pressure on commuters across the country, the Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, last weekend rallied stakeholders into action for the Yuletide season.
Our contractors last week, I believe you will have seen that in the reports. We have held meetings with our agencies, FERMA. We have also held meetings with collaborative agencies, Federal Road Safety Corps, to ensure that we get the roads ready for the challenges that they pose at the end of the year in terms of more people, more vehicles, more goods to move around. We've asked our contractors to return to site for that purpose, even as they await payment, and go and stabilize those places where construction work has not been completed.
At a meeting in Abuja with the FRSC Corps Marshal, Dr. Boboye Oyeyemi, representatives of FERMA, government contractors, and the federal contractors of works from the states in attendance, Fashola directed the contractors handling the various roads to remobilize to site for special works, promising that they would receive payment before the end of the year.
While construction work is going on some of the routes used for moving cargo, we've met with our contractors and directed them to provide some palliative measures to ease the movement of trucks and tankers. And some of these routes include the Benin, Auchi, Okene, Wari, Saple, Benin Road, the Ilorin-Jeba Road, and so on and so forth. Many roads across the country. Calabar too also, we've asked the contractor to go back there and provide relief work while his construction is going on. There's a detail of those roads, essentially to say we are giving every support where we can to ease the problem of moving fuel during the period.
It was expedient for the major stakeholders in the road sector to brainstorm over the issue of smooth travel experience for commuters as the Christmas and New Year festivities were around the corner, as a way of ensuring safety for those traveling by road across the country. The meeting with the major stakeholders was also aimed at building a synergy among them, stressing that with the gradual rounding off of the rainy season and the onset of dry weather, contractors would return to site to stabilize such portions, while FEMA would also escalate action in providing palliatives to damaged areas.
What is more important is the attitude and the kind of control we put into our driving skill during this period, and people getting to know that it's a period that there is more movement of people on the highways. We make them to know that there is equally more need for them to be patient and develop their skills while using the road. With all this in place, I believe that we are getting somewhere.
It is noteworthy that the efforts of government in road sector is not questionable, as evident in some completed roads across the country. But it is the hope of vehicle owners, transport companies, and indeed commuters that travel time is reduced through the rehabilitation efforts promised by the ministry and its agencies this Christmas season.
Welcome back. Recently, Mr. President asked the judicial arms of government to set up special crimes for special offenses. On Split Views this week, we look at the judicial sector reforms based on this presidential directive. Join us. Welcome to this segment of our program, Abuja Dispatch, that we call Split Views. And on Split Views this night, we are having in our studio a human rights lawyer, Frank Tietie. You are welcome to our studio, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Now, we want to look at the judicial sector reform so far. Now, what will you consider to be the narratives like?
Well, I don't think we've had a formally established or a formally launched judicial reform as such. What we have seen is a situation where attention has been given to the need to have some reforms in the judiciary as a result of recent developments in terms of accusation of corruption against the judiciary. The UNODC report on corrupt institutions in Nigeria placed the judiciary as the second most corrupt institution in Nigeria, next to the police. And that is based on the perception index, which was also superintended by the National Bureau of Statistics. So definitely Nigerians have not had the best of times with the judiciary in terms of unpredictability, and when it also deals with issues of slow dispensation of justice. The administration of justice has been haphazard across the states, and then we have also seen a situation where judges have been accused of having been compromised, and then the worst of it all, the incipient disregard for court orders. So all of these are issues that require some attention to be given to the judiciary. And that's what we've seen, what has been interpreted as a form of ongoing judicial reform. There hasn't been any formally launched reform on the judiciary as such.
Now, with this kind of scenario you have just painted, how will you consider the recent the executive's proclamation, trying to convince the judiciary to launch special courts for special crime?
No. That, for people like us who come from a human rights background, we think that it's unthinkable. It should not be considered at all, because it is outrightly discriminatory. How do you set up a court for some persons special because they are special, and as such they should be giving speedy dispensation of justice. No, you will reform the judiciary and then let there be speedy dispensation of justice for everybody and not only for some special people because they committed some special crimes. It's not proper. And again, in Nigeria, there is still the presumption of innocence that is, soundly founded upon the Constitution, fundamental right, particularly Section 36, subsection 5. And now, you on that basis, you cannot now say that you have a special court for certain persons because they've committed special crimes. There is usually the slant that is biased against such people. So please don't talk about special courts. Talk about reforming the judiciary so that they can deal with cases for everybody in a special manner and not necessarily to some special people.
But I believe the presidency is trying to fast track the prosecution of...
That is always the reading, that will always be with problems. You cannot begin to fast track. That's why the executive must remain the executive and allow the judiciary to do its job. You cannot, as an executive, wish to have speedy dispensation of justice in certain areas where you can claim the glory, where you can play to the gallery, where you can easily make reference to the fact that you're making progress without caring about people. Now, judiciary doesn't only deal with criminal cases or cases that have to do with corruption, but a lot more of those cases in the judiciary, which people are complaining against, are cases that involve disputes, in land disputes as to debts being owed by various Nigerians among themselves, and contracts not being carried out according to agreements. These are the matters that are before the Nigerian judiciary. They have long drawn. You don't imagine that certain cases that go through the three rungs of the judicial ladder can take up to 20 years. I mean, what kind of thing is that? And these, you cannot successfully do business in that kind of climb when eventually you get into one form of the disagreement or the other. You are not certain that there is a court that will deal with the matter and it will end there. It will go up to the Supreme Court. Sometimes it goes up to the Supreme Court and then the Supreme Court simply says, okay, go and start all over again. These are the things we need to reform.
But you find out that there's this general narrative that the judiciary, in particular, is helping the space of justice system, as in justice towards making sure that the war against corruption is really placed to the final level, that the judiciary is really causing a lot of delays.
No. You want to talk about lawyers? Are they part of the judiciary? Because they also contribute a lot to the delay. Do you talk about... No. The judiciary is not only the judges. When you say the judiciary is the second most corrupt institution in Nigeria, as based on that UNODC report that was published by the National Bureau of Statistics, it's not necessarily because the judges are the ones collecting bribes or the corrupt persons. They are more of people, that is the ancillary staff of in the judiciary, that is registrars, bailiffs, sheriffs, and all of these persons. They are the ones who contribute a lot in this, corrupt image that the judiciary has. And now, so when you also now, correlate that with the issue of, speedy dispensation of justice, it is not necessarily the judges that are responsible. Rather, it is the process, the system that's in place. In a situation where you cannot, for example, how do you expect a judge to go on with a matter when the accused decides not to be present? And the law stipulates clearly that in the criminal trial, the trial at all times, an accused must be present before the trial can continue. So, and then the judge is compelled to issue a bench warrant, and then it takes for a large number of, quite a number of, months and maybe even years before the accused person is arrested and brought to face trial. So it's not a one-sided thing. It's not the judiciary. And I think the executive is looking in the wrong direction in terms of, by preferring, suggestions like, special courts. No, that won't solve it at all. If you look at the large number of backlog of cases currently in the judiciary, that should actually cause a state of emergency to be declared in the judiciary. Not necessarily because of corrupt persons, but because justice is not being served in business, justice is not being served in private matters, matrimonial matters, justice not being served, because in matters that have to do with you know, development. And anytime you delay justice, you're actually denying justice to the people involved.
What function should the judiciary, we still refer to this, what function should they really perform to aid this ongoing onslaught?
First, the judiciary must continue to maintain its role of impartiality and independence. And then, I agree that there is need for speedy dispensation of justice, speedy, adjudication of corruption cases. For example, Orji Uzokalo has just been sentenced after nearly or over 10 years of prosecution. What kind of thing is that? It's the man had freedom all the while to contest elections and to become the chief whip of this Nigerian Senate. The man should have at least served his term and possibly come back as a politician if at all he's able to get one pardon or the other. Also. But it shows you that the judiciary has not really been very impressive in terms of, meeting the expectations of Nigerians. But when you look at the constitution that we have, that someone can, for the purpose of an interlocutory application, go up to the Supreme Court, even though that has been taken care of by various practice directions by the chief judges of the various states, and particularly the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and to the extent that interlocutory applications can no longer stop criminal trials. But the judiciary, what is required is more of resources than carrying out fire brigade approaches like creating special courts. There is need for constitutional reform. The idea of going up to the Supreme Court, which takes so many years before a matter is resolved, must somehow be resolved either by a constitutional amendment, or by a very, very, very responsive law by the National Assembly. But that is not enough, because it will not have the same effect in the states.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank.
Yes.
You really spoken well, sir.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This national security strategy has proffered all kinds of strategies in mitigating the threats faced by Nigeria, current threats as well as threats that are anticipated to emerge in the near future, based on the demands of working on a whole of government in combination with a whole of society approach to achieve a whole of nation approach. So what we have done is to shift away from the previous state-centric philosophy to now deal with the core issues of human security, the well-being of the Nigerian citizens. So basically, the national security strategy calls on all elements, all institutions of government, as well as the wider Nigerian society, to converge and try to deal with these problems, because security in the 21st century cannot be dealt with just with institutions working alone.
That is our package this week on Abuja Dispatch. For further information, comments, and suggestions, you can reach us out on our various social media platforms. We do hope that you enjoy our package this week on Abuja Dispatch. A week from now, we bring you another refreshing package. Same time, same station. Adegboye Garogodo is my name. Thank you for your love and concern. Good night.